Alrighty, let's face it, life is hard. Today, a licensed professional Christian counselor will give us the scoop on coping skills for moms and kids alike. She'll explain the various developmental stages of adolescence and help moms understand what their kids should and should not be learning. That's coming up next. Welcome to the Moms for America podcast. Each week, we introduce you to special guests who share their personal stories and advice on how to build a strong foundation of faith, family, and freedom in their home, community, and country. Hi, moms. I'm Debbie Corralitis, your host, and this is the Moms for America podcast, a show inspiring, encouraging, and educating moms in their journey through motherhood. Right on the top of the show, we want to invite you to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also ask that you share this podcast with your mama friends in your circle. We do a great podcast every week with wonderful guests. We have another great guest today. Also, if you have any suggestions for the podcast, you want to send me an idea or a topic, would you email me at podcast@momsforamerica.net? Again, that's podcast@momsforamerica.net. I do want to invite all of our moms listening to please join our movement here at Moms for America. We would love to have you in our tribe here. It's moms like us uniting all across the country to fight for faith, family, freedom, and the Constitution. So please go ahead and check out Moms for America at our website, which is amazing, momsforamerica.us. Alrighty, today, Gina Yanovich is my guest. Now, Gina is a licensed Christian professional counselor. She counsels individuals and groups, and today she is here to talk with us about a myriad of issues related to mental health. Alrighty, I'm delighted to have you, Gina. Welcome to the Moms for America podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
All right, Gina. I understand that you're a mama. Can you tell me a little bit about your family, your tribe over there, and your kids? Introduce us to your family.
Yeah, I am a wife of 32 years. I've been married to my college sweetheart. We started having kids shortly after we got married, about 3 years in, and I had a first set of my twin daughters, identical twin girls, and 3 years later I had another set of identical twin boys. So I was in baby hell for a long time.
So you beat the odds there, girl. Wow.
Right. So I had 3 and under, and was fully into it. I did end up getting my undergrad degree in psychology. And before I had the kids, I worked in a psych hospital for kids on a locked unit for 2 years, and then for a year with teenagers. I went on to, once I was so busy with my kids, I stayed home, but I never left the field. I continued to always work on my field, continued to always be involved somehow in my field. And then I went on to get my master's in counseling, and has recently, in the last 3.5 years, opened my own private practice. So now I work in Phoenix, Arizona. My kids are now 29 and 26, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a lot of great things out there and offering a service and support that is so needed right now. It's tough out there. We know that as parents, that it is tough out there. So, Gina, I'm going to start the conversation a little general here. There's a growing concern for what's happening around the country. We know that. We see it. There's school curriculum. There's laws being passed. There's medical issues, gender issues for minor children. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you have seen in the culture, maybe over the last 10, 20 years? I mean, we have gone from one type of society to literally something that none of us recognize. And the challenges, obviously, and that's why counseling is so important. That's why the home and a spiritual life is so important. But what are you seeing, and how shocking is it from your perspective as a counselor?
Well, I think what I've seen the most is that school has especially school has drifted away from what we know. And I think anytime humans need certainty. And I think that it has caused a lot of uncertainty for a lot of people. And when that happens, it brings up so much fear. And I think when we operate in fear is where we really struggle. And so that is where I've seen a lot of parents working a lot in fear, fearful
Mm.
of all sorts of things. And in that is emotional regulation becomes harder. All sorts of like even our prefrontal cortex working from where we problem solve or work through things, all of that becomes harder for us. So we need to like just understand that when these changes arrive, that the natural response to a human would be fear. It is a
Yeah.
natural part of who we are. And so I'm seeing that. I'm seeing parents make decisions, all sorts of decisions, which I completely understand. I mean, the life of your kid is super important. So it's
Mhm.
important for every parent to make decisions based on their kid, what's going on at their home, and every particular personality. Sometimes,
Mhm.
even within the family, it looks different, like what one of your kids do versus what maybe the first
Right.
versus the baby does.
Right.
And so, even in that, so that's why I've seen is a lot of fear arise.
Yeah. A lot of fear. And I think what goes hand in hand with that is confusion. And it just
Yeah.
seems like there is so much. I mean, we're confusing children about just their very soul, their identity. And so that it just creates a culture of a bizarre culture that is very difficult. What about the stages of development that our child goes through? I know you speak to this. Can you talk about those stages? And I think as we get into this conversation, we're going to really be learning a lot about how to cope and how to help and how to support our
Yeah.
kids through these stages.
Absolutely, absolutely. From 5 to 12 is industry versus inferiority. That is a major, major learning stage from 5 years old to 12 years old, which means we learn, this is where we learn our writing, our reading, our arithmetic. We're learning a lot of stuff in
Mm.
that developmental stage. That's a really important stage because all of the synapses in our brains are at its peak. We're able to take in a lot of information. We go from not reading to doing like pretty advanced like
Mhm.
reading, being
I
able
see
to
that.
read and write a whole little book report and everything that takes all the way from a 12-year old from a 5-year old. And you see it's an incredible amount of learning. But what we need to pay attention to in those years is that the brain needs to know, like hook into like non-negotiables, like things that are very factual,
Mm.
because the brain needs that in the learning. That's why it's hugely important that we learn, that we fail and we succeed, all of those things. And there's that industrious versus inferiority. If I don't learn to read, I feel inferior. If I don't learn these, I feel bad about myself. Now, I don't think it's all has to be like I'm only winning or I'm only losing. I need to actually experience both of those in those developmental stage.
Mhm.
Why I don't believe that sex ed is part of that is because so much different interpretation. So if we understand the brain, and the brain is based on experiential learning, that's how the
Mm.
brain learns.
Between 5 and 12 is experiential learning.
We are always, our
Mhm.
brain is always being structured on our experience.
Right.
So, and it's always being interpreted through our experience. So if I
Right.
have a child in class who's been molested, I don't know as a teacher, and I have a child who has never experienced that, those two different experiences will interpret like a sex ed class
Yeah.
extremely
Oh, I could
different.
see that.
And that's why it's like a very difficult thing to bring up in those years. Now, in parenting years, it's completely appropriate to be bringing
Correct.
home. But in a classroom setting where you don't know everybody's experiences, you run a real risk on a lot
Mhm.
of situations for kids.
Okay. So that's 5 to 12. Now, what's the next stage?
Well, that is where we do go into like learning about ourselves and our ego and who we are, and that is more experiential learning. So we that is when we get more ourselves into more of that. So that is a whole different stage of life. So
Mhm.
that becomes much more open to talking about things, experimenting things, and that is where I kind of learn about sex and what's important and all those kind of things. So those are different
Where
stages.
is the child's brain in this section? So 5 to 12, I
Well,
kind of think of 12. Now we've got preteens
yeah.
going into teen.
And
Where?
and mind you, experience is still very important for the brain.
Mhm.
So all the brains are at different levels at this point, right?
Right.
So it just depends on what your home life is, what
Mhm.
your exposure is. anything, everything you're exposed to, everything is impacting your brain and how it's interpreting things. So am I always watching video game? Am I always playing video games?
Right.
Am I just always running and playing soccer? And so much is very different for every single person. And so the brain has so much to do with interpretation. And that's such a key part of our lives. It is such a key part. So
we've, how many stages did you want to talk to us about? So we've got the first stage, 5 to 12, 12 to what is the second stage?
What is it? 12 to 18 is your second stage. And then of course we move on and the stages get very much longer. I think my stage I like to talk to you about is the 5 to 12. And I teach a coping skills class for moms who are dealing with their kids in that age group.
Right. And this is such a foundational time, 5 to 12. We all know that as moms. And this is why it's so offensive when they come in now and they say that they're going to start discussing pronouns and they're going to start, pushing a sex ed, pushing sexuality in the schools. I mean, what would a brain even be thinking about between 5 and 10 years old about a gender or picking a gender? Did they know, right? The indoctrination authorities know that if they can get the children at this young developmental stage, which you're talking about, this is really when they can start changing a generation. I mean, not for good, by the way, either.
Right. Well, I guess in my heart of hearts, I would hope that educators wouldn't be quite as decisive as that, but maybe they are. But maybe it's that they think it's part of like teaching kids to accept a bunch of people. The problem with that, when we move in from an education, in my perspective, when we as educators move into something that is more social based and more on the side such as sexuality, that is very personal. So we move into that. That's where I say it is very difficult to teach a classroom of children that you have no idea what the experiential learning is.
It's a good point.
Just teach one thing. What we have to do is, and that's why it's very individual. So what one kid's exposed to, I don't know what another kid is exposed to. And there's no proof that that means that it teaches a kid to be more tolerant. Tolerance looks different. Tolerance is a very different thing than having full exposure of like questioning who you are. Every kid is going to question who they are. That's part of life. That's what we do as we grow, is we question ourselves.
Right. Well, I like to get into really your wheelhouse, and that's really coping, right?
Yes.
So you counsel, tell us a little bit about what you do. You meet with parents to teach them how to cope. And we always say here at Moms for America, if the mom's in a good shape, then usually the home's in a good shape, right? If mom's healthy, the home's healthy. That doesn't mean we're perfect, but at least if we can get moms in a good spot, they then in turn can raise and mentor and teach their children. So I kind of want to get into this whole coping mechanisms that you teach parents, and then what we can do as parents to help our kids. So what is the goal that you like to share and do and help moms with their coping? Because we do need a lot of help, by the way, Gina.
I know. I get it so much. I think the most important thing that I teach moms is how the brain works. And like, I'll tell you something. I teach a coping skills class that everyone says, I wish I had known this in high school. I wish I'd known. We have these computers, we have these operating systems called our brains. And we never spend time learning how it works. And as a consequence, we kind of get tossed around about it. And that's a really big problem, because your brain is your operating system. It is how you interpret and see the world. So even that real big thing is the experience. And teaching parents experience it, like knowing that the brain has experience related changes. So teaching parents not to allow kids to focus only on one thing, because a kid has to be exposed to a lot of things and diversify the brain so it can like learn different techniques and a lot of things. So we understand that. Another thing is to understand emotion. Emotion's a really big difficult thing for kids to understand, even for adults to understand, and
Mhm.
for moms to understand it, is it takes it even another notch. Like we think we're emotionally balanced until we have kids, and then the kids throwing a temper tantrum or saying something like knocks your
Yes,
emotions off.
sure does.
So it's a really important thing to understand emotions. And emotions are almost like the waves on a ocean. Think of it as your emotions. The fact is some of them are big. Like I would say anger becomes a big tidal wave at times, but
Yeah.
it's still not long lasting. The fact is our emotions are shorter in the fact that they don't last forever, and we can ride them as a wave. That is
Mm.
super important to understand. There are studies that show that our emotions come up from sometimes from the body. Maybe it's a heart rate. Okay,
Mhm.
our heart starts to change, and well, that's anxiety, that's fear, that's anger, that's So remember, there's a body mind connection there, and just
Mhm.
teaching kids this. Our emotions are not facts. They're not necessarily rooted in a fact, but they're an emotion that we have to deal with. And
Mhm.
so maybe let me give you an example.
Yeah,
Lonely.
I would like some examples because
Yeah,
I think if you can paint a picture for us, then we know how to respond and some things that we can actually be working on.
absolutely. So like a kid comes home, it's like very lonely. Um, they feel lonely. A friend was being mean to them at school. Now there's an interpretation for that. So a kid's feeling mean at school. It said something mean at school, and it made me feel so sad, right? And I come home
Mhm.
sad. Tell my mom. Now, mom can either do like, oh, that girl, she shouldn't have said that. That is so mean. I hate it when girls are mean like that, right? And I can take my emotions on that
I
level.
think I've said that. I think I've done that. Okay, Gina, don't be revealing too much here. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Or you can dive into that a little bit more. So
Mhm.
that experience actually impacts the brain for later relationships. So this is what I mean. Every experience impacts you, everyone. So this little girl, your daughter comes home, says that her friend was mean. Guess what? That experience will impact all her relationships as it's going into the brain. It's like, I don't ever want you to feel lonely again. No one should ever be mean to you again. So anytime someone's being mean to you, I'm going to remind you, right? That's why I want to talk about it.
Mm.
So I come home, I talk about it. I say, she was so mean. It's like, oh, what'd she do? And you'll talk about that. But really, the questions is like, what did it mean to you when she did do it? What did that mean to you? Well, it meant that I was not a friend, or it meant that she didn't like me, or it meant that she hates me. It's amazing what everyone thinks of it differently. I even ask my clients, like, what did that mean to you? And I think I know what they're going to say. And they'll always say something totally different. I'm like, wow, I never thought you'd say that, right? Every brain, it means something different because of their experiences. So you and I were a little older, so it's not going to mean the same to us as it does to like a little 8-year-old who's
Mhm.
experiencing this for the first time. So she'll say what it means to her. Usually black and white, that's normal.
So
Here's
this is the coping skill we're playing out right now. We're asking them what it means to them.
what it means to them.
Okay.
And then it's like, and okay, what does that mean? It means I'm lonely. Oh, that's a tough feeling. So then we talk about that feeling. It's like, what's that feeling? It's like, well, it's lonely. I feel like I don't have any more friends. And it's like, okay, all of those are normal. That's all okay to feel that. And I kind of validate those feelings. But then
Okay.
I kind of get asked for evidence from it. So then I say, do you have any friends? I mean, you feel like you don't have anyone? No, I don't feel like I was like, oh, okay. Like maybe you could tell me, like, if you have one, do you have one friend? Well, I don't know. I mean, like maybe mom's your friend, or maybe your cousin's your friend, maybe the girl down the street is a friend. Okay, okay, I have one friend. So do you see how we're starting to challenge these thoughts?
Mm.
So we begin to start working with challenging thoughts. This is why I don't agree with
Is that
affirming.
what it's called? Challenging thoughts?
Yes,
Okay.
this is why I don't agree with affirming every thought. Right? We actually have to see if it's rooted in some sort
So
of
are you doing an investigation?
yeah, you're
Okay.
investigating. Well, what we
Okay.
do is we put our thoughts on trial.
We
So
put our thoughts on trial.
if
Okay.
it doesn't hold up in trial, maybe it's not true. You know,
Okay.
if
All right. I
here's
get that. We
so
used to have a thing here at the house that we'd call out the jury, but that's a whole different story. But
oh
yeah, I know what you're saying where you have to realize they have to realize what is truth. Because
that's
someone's
right.
picking on them, because someone doesn't like them, because someone's being mean, that doesn't mean they're a terrible person. It doesn't mean that they don't have friends. It doesn't mean that they're not loved. but their little hearts get broken, and I understand that.
No. Their heart gets broken. And the good thing is, it's like we put a realistic time frame on it. The good thing is this doesn't last forever. So we don't have this feeling that will last forever. Thank goodness it's just a wave. It's not like forever we're in that only pool, right?
Mhm.
And this is where we get ourselves mixed up when we're young, because it's like, oh, I'll never feel unlonely. I'm always going to feel lonely. Well, not always. So sometimes we'll write it down like, when have you ever not felt lonely?
Mhm.
So sometimes we'll actually give the kid challenges to find different times that they haven't felt lonely. And then we
So
say,
what would be the top couple things that you would say for coping for our children? List them out for me so I'm clear. I think I've got you sharing your ideas, but I want to understand them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What would be your top 5?
I would say, understand the brain,
Okay.
understand how to deal with emotions and to regulate your emotions, and then to understand like how to interact or like use your brain to its fullest. Meaning, how do I like accept my emotion, identify it, and then like carry on? Hard to do, but
Right.
that's a practice that we all have to do. And so, like, understanding those emotions. Now, within that, there's a ton of coping skills, right? And I would never be able to go over those with you, but active listening, gratitude, getting over resentment, all of those are part of our coping skills. But
Mhm.
understanding that the brain has to cope in this world, and it's actually made to cope with a lot of difficulty.
Right.
Is actually
It
created.
is a challenging world every day, right?
And believe it or not, your brain is actually it can adapt and work with this.
Mhm.
So I guess the hope I feel like is that parents need to understand that these kids are born for this generation and
Yeah.
are able to handle whatever life gives them, because we
Yeah.
have this amazing brain, and we have this amazing like those who are spiritual and have God. We have all sorts of ways. Let's be honest. There's many generations that were very awful and very lived in very horrible times, even Bible times, very
Yeah.
difficult times for the brain to live. And we're able to cope with it. Like we have the ability to use our brains to cope with.
We sure
And
do. And faith. And faith is very important a part of your counseling. How do you incorporate faith? What are the important factors that you're sharing about coping, but utilizing all the gifts that God has given us? What do you share on that one with faith?
well, when you look at scripture and you look at Jesus, he lived on this earth and had
Hmm.
every coping skill that I teach in class: active listening, learning how to radical acceptance, learning how to just work through problems, problem solving. He understood like boundaries, how to get away by himself. He learned all ways to be able to emotionally regulate.
Mm,
He dealt with a human body. That's hard. It's hard for all of us. And so we
right.
have all of those. So we do actually put scripture with all of our coping skills. And it is amazing when you start applying it that way. I also add neuroscience with it. And when you put those together, it's amazing. I guess that's the key, is that you're equipped to cope with this world.
That's the key. That's your message, right? We are not we're not defeated.
No.
We really God has raised us for such a time as this. God gives us the skills that we need. And God does it right. He doesn't give us anything too hard beyond our hope.
And there are times, of course, when things feel very hard
Right.
and feel overwhelming. But sometimes we put a wrong time frame on that, because
Mm.
sometimes we say it's going to feel like this forever, right? And that's a coping skill to use. It's like, maybe my time frame's wrong, you
Maybe
know?
my time frame's wrong. Okay.
And that would be a challenge, right? A challenging to that thought. Is like, maybe it's just for now. Could I handle it now? I know when
Right.
we work out, right? It's like anyone can do this for 2 more minutes, right?
Right.
That's kind of true in our own lives. Is like,
Sure. What are you seeing as far as coping skills that need to be addressed for the moms before we go today? Is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it stress? What are you seeing when the moms come in and talk with you? What are you seeing that the moms are the top issues that moms are seeing for them
I,
personally?
yeah, I think what I see over and over, and I talk about over and over in class, is is emotional regulation. We just,
Which is,
is just learning to ride your own wave and to calm it down. So we do a lot of breath, calming ourselves, even challenging our own thoughts. Like most of the time, we go right into fear when our kid is having a hard time. We
right,
go into fear and coming into love, which is where God is. We go into problem solving, being able to talk and communicate. There's so much better things. That's the prefrontal cortex, which is where we want to be. That's where we come in love. When we go into fear, we go right into our, panic, survival place. And when we move into like trying to say, where am I right now? Where am I? Am I in fear? If I'm in fear, I need to really calm down, come up and say, that is not where God wants me.
right.
I need to be in love and understand that I have everything. I am equipped for all of this in life. And that's a really powerful story. If I know how to use my operating system, I can be quite powerful.
Any closing thoughts for our moms? You talked a lot about fear, and I think fear does set off a whole, from your health
Yeah.
to your relationships, just to anxiety. I think, and it is it feels very fearful out there, although I know that God is with us and that we are warriors. But anything else you'd like to share with the moms before we leave? Because if, like we've said earlier, if the moms are not in a good spot, the house isn't, the home isn't, our children aren't. We have to be strong. We have to figure out how to cope through each right, left turn that hits us, whether it's our kids or whether it's us or whether it's our marriage.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I mean, life is hard. So I guess I would say to moms is moms, you are able to have huge impact on your child's mental health. That
Mm.
means you're able to teach them so much and they mirror so much of how you regulate. And it's so important to teach them that they have the power and adaptation to go through so many things if they understand how beautiful their brain is made and even understanding all the little things that make their brain beautiful. I encourage lots of conversations at home, lots of like family dinners that you're talking. I think the one key as every parent should give is like, you can tell me anything. It will never change me from loving you. And that
That's right.
is an open communication of like, oftentimes people keep things from you because of your reactions. And so even understanding that, like it's important for you to not overreact to things and to be able to openly hear each other and be able to like help them identify their own operating system and how to work with it the best they can. So,
Amen, sister.
yeah.
We've got to
Yeah.
do that every day and every moment. It is really. So thank you, Gina. I want to make sure that we mention about your counseling center.
Yeah.
Tell us about that and what you offer and where we can
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah, I'm at mindhelm.org. I have it's individual and couples counseling, and I'm over in Phoenix, Arizona, and you can find me online. So
And you can do it virtual?
I do it with
Okay.
as well. So yeah, so
Wow, the world's just at our fingertips now. We can actually call you up
that's right.
and say help.
After COVID, I know.
Oh, thank you, Gina. We so
Yeah,
appreciate your tips on coping and your words of advice for our moms. And God bless you.
yeah.
And keep helping those mamas and those families and
You
those
too.
children with your
Oh,
great advice.
thank you. Keep it up. I love your podcast.
All right. Thank you, Gina.
Bye bye.
All righty. Well, thanks again, Gina, for joining us. Again, you can check out Gina's Counseling Center online by going to mindhelm.org. Again, that's mindhelm, HELM.org. And you can get more information for Gina there. All righty. So I want to remind everyone, please go ahead, visit our website again, momsforamerica.us. Check out all of our amazing resources, our events, our programs. We have it all, mama. I also want to encourage you to check out our signature program, which is called the Cottage Meetings. These 12 lessons will literally inspire you about America's amazing heritage and help you to educate your children and make an impact in your community. These principles of liberty are amazing to learn and to teach at your home, at your kitchen table. This program, along with many of the other programs on our website, will help you impact your family in a very powerful way. From parental rights to public policy, Moms for America has it all. Lastly, I do want to invite you that when you come by to our website, would you please sign up for our weekly newsletter? This will help you get educated on issues that relate to you as a mom and obviously keep you up to date with everything that is happening here at Moms for America and literally everything that's happening around the country. We say this every week, moms. We believe that liberty begins at home, that you moms are truly the heartbeat of America. That's why this movement is so powerful. The moms are going to save our country. Again, like, subscribe, and share. Can't wait to see you next week for another informative, inspiring discussion for moms just like you. Thanks for joining us, moms. And you know what? Let's keep changing our world one home at a time. Talk to you soon.